Welcome everyone. Today we are going to subtract positive and negative fractions and mixed numbers. So the steps are listed below. Step 1, convert the subtraction problem into an addition problem by keep, change, change. And if we look at my first one, I have negative 2 3/4 minus negative 1 1/6. To change that, we're going to leave the first one for keep, change the subtraction to addition, and then do the opposite by changing the 1 1/6 to a negative 1 1/6. The next step, number 2, is decide if you're adding or subtracting due to the signs. And the signs are the same, so we're going to add. If they're different, we would subtract, but they are the same. So I wrote positive, the absolute values. Next thing we do is figure out which has a greater absolute value. And a negative 2 3/4 has a greater absolute value, which is 2 3/4 plus a positive 1 1/6. And we did decide we were adding. To be able to add them, you do have to have common denominators. And the denominator that works for 4 and 6 would be 12, because the first multiple of 6 is 6, does not work for 4, but 12 does. So 4 times 3 is 12, so that makes 3 times 3, 9. And for 1, 6, we're going to make it 12, so 6 times 2 is 12, so 1 times 2 is 2. We're going to go ahead and add them together, and we have 9 twelfths plus 2 twelfths, which gives us 11 twelfths. And then go ahead and add your whole numbers, which would be 2 plus 1, which gives us 3. So we get a not final answer, 3 and 1/12. We have one step left. You have to go back and look at the signs. The signs are the same, so our answer would be negative because both numbers are negative. So our final answer is negative 3 and 1/12. We're going to try 2 more together, and then I have you do 2 on your own for practice. So the first one we have here is 4/7 minus 3 1/4. The first step is to change it to an addition problem. So keep the first one, change to addition, and then do the opposite of positive 3 1/4, which would be a negative 3 1/4. So the addition problem is 4/7 plus a negative 3 1/4. The third step is to decide if you're adding or subtracting, and we are subtracting because we have one positive and one negative. So we're going to subtract. You put the larger absolute value first, which is 3 1/4. So 3 1/4 minus 4/7. We do need to find a common denominator to be able to subtract these. So we're going to go ahead and find a common denominator of 28. So we have 4 times 7 is 28. So 1 times 7 is 7. 28 for 1/4. And then for 4/7, we have 7 times 4 is 28, and 4 times 4 is 16. We're going to go ahead and subtract. So we take 7 minus 16, but you cannot do that. So you got to go ahead and regroup or make this an improper fraction. So I like to regroup. So we're going to make that 3 into a 2. We're going to add a fraction that's equal to 1 that has a denominator of 28. So I need 28, and to make it equal to 1, it has to be 28 28s. So we put 28 28s plus the 7 28s, which gives me a total of 35 28s. Now I do have enough to subtract my 16 28s. So you take 35 minus 16, which gives us 19 28s. So 19 28s, and then you subtract your whole numbers, which would be 2 minus nothing, which would be 2. Last thing you have to do is decide if your answer is positive or negative. If you go back up and look, the absolute value of negative 3 1/4 is larger, so the answer would be negative 2 and 19 28. Let's move on to the next problem. So I have a negative 4 4/5 minus a negative 1 5/8. So to use keep, change, change, first one stays the same. You change subtraction to addition, and then you do the opposite of negative 1 5/8, which is a positive 1 5/8. So, and the signs are different. So we're going to go ahead and subtract, and the absolute value of negative 4 4/5 is larger, so it goes first. So I have 4 4/5 minus 1 5/8. You need to find a common denominator. On this one, the common denominator is 40. So we're going to go ahead and find a common denominator of 40 for both of them. So we're going to take 8 times 5 to get 40. So 4 times 8 is 32. 40ths. And then we're going to take 8 times 5 again. So we're going to take 5 times 5 to get 25 40ths. So now I have 32 40ths minus 25 40ths, and we're going to go ahead and subtract that, which would give us 7 40ths. And then subtract your whole numbers, 4 minus 1, which gives us 3. And you decide on your sign, the very last thing to do, and it should be negative because the negative 4 4/5 has a larger absolute value. So negative 3 and 7 40ths. All right, it is your turn to try, so we'll move to the next slide. So your turn to try, you have to do the problem. Number 1 is negative 2 and 7/10 minus 5/6. So you can go ahead and pause the video and you can try this problem, and then I will go over the answer once you have completed it. Restart the video. So the addition problem for this, you need to change it to an addition problem, which would be a negative 2 and 7/10 plus, because you changed it, subtracting to addition, and the opposite, which would be a negative 5/6. And the signs are the same, so we are going to go ahead and add them since the signs are the same. So we're going to head and add them. So when you add them, you end up changing for a common denominator of 30ths. So I have 2 and 7/10 plus 5/6, common denominator of 30ths makes it 21 30ths and 25 30ths. Go ahead and add them together. You end up getting 46 30ths, and the answer would be negative because both of them are negative. But then 46 30ths is improper with our whole number of 2. So we need to change that to 1 and 16 30ths, which added with the 2 would give us 3 and 16 30ths, and it is still negative. And then you need to simplify 16 30ths because they do have a greatest common factor of 2. So your final answer would be negative 3 and 8/15. Negative 3 and 8/15. I hope you got that problem correct. When you pause the video, we'll move on to number 2. I'll leave the answer showing there. And we'll move on to number 2. And number 2 would be, you guys might want to go ahead and pause the video first. Number 2 is 3 and 4/9 minus negative 5 and 2/3. So go ahead and pause the video so you can try this problem, and then we will go over the answer. So the first thing you have to do is change it into an addition problem by keeping the first one, changing to addition, and changing it to make it a positive 5 and 2/3 plus. So they are both positive, so we're going to add them. So if we go ahead and add them together, need to find a common denominator of 9. So that would be 3 and 4/9 because it's already 9ths, and then 5 and 6/9. So go ahead and add them, which would be 10/9, and we add the whole numbers, which would be 8 and 10/9. But as like the last one, it is an improper fraction, so change it to 1 and 1/9 plus the 8, which gives us 9 and 1/9. And it is a positive answer because in our addition problem, both numbers were positive. So we have a positive 9 and 1/9. I hope you got that one correct. If you didn't, you always go back and re-look at your work and see what you messed up on. Please contact your teacher if you have any questions on how to subtract positive and negative fractions. Good luck on your assignment.